Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the Eric Geiger Leadership Podcast. Today, I have Rob Pelinka, who is the president and general manager of the Los Angeles Lakers. So Mariners Church, Laker Nation, we got a bunch of Laker Nation and Mariners Church. They're going to be jacked about this.
Well, and you're a basketball guy too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you tell stories.
I try to be. I'm not like you. I didn't play, in
apparently
college
you
like
have your number tattooed somewhere.
It was supposed to be. But I
half
stopped
a number
I
or
stopped
initials
at the initial.
or something?
I stopped at the initial. Do you have your number?
I did not shame myself that way.
Now, if I remember the story, you were a basketball player in Chicago in high school, and then went to University of Michigan. When did you know that you were going to go?
Yeah, so I when I was 2, my dad was a public school teacher. He taught architectural drafting, and then he taught actually a auto mechanic and welding class of all things. And when I was 2, he came home from work one day, and had a little welded basketball hoop. And I can remember just being obsessed with basketball and shooting on that hoop.
Yeah.
He ended up being a coach, tons of hours in the gym, and then had a chance to get recruited by all the top schools, and chose University of Michigan. Was blessed when I was there to play in 3 Final Fours, which is a really hard thing to play
huge.
in one. But and then we did win a championship too when I was a freshman. So incredible college time.
And your life intersected a lot of great basketball. And Fab Five was around that time, right?
Yeah, the Fab Five. For people that don't follow it closely, it was a 5 freshmen that came to the University of Michigan and started, but it really kind of started a cultural revolution. They launched
longer shorts,
long baggy shorts, black socks, the bald heads, and it was at the onset of like hip hop music, West Coast, East Coast, and became a really popular team that a guy named Mitch Albom, who's a great writer, wrote Tuesdays with Morrie. He wrote a book called Fab
I read
Five.
it. I read the book. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my era at the University of Michigan, and incredible time to be there.
So I want to go from that and talk about Nehemiah. I know you're Pelinka, not Nehemiah, but I want to draw a couple of comparisons. We just finished week 4 of Nehemiah, and we're seeing he started as a cupbearer in Persia. So even though he has a Jewish ancestry, that's not where he never had been to Israel or Judea until he goes to rebuild the wall. So he first starts as a cupbearer, and then he becomes this visionary builder, and then we'll see later in Nehemiah he's the governor. So he has 3 very different roles, right? Cupbearer in Persia, builder in Israel, Judea, and then governor. Your roles, went from college to an attorney to sports agent to Lakers. Those are I know it's all basketball and Nehemiah's all leadership, but really different roles. I'd love to hear a bit about your journey and how the lessons you learned in each step prepared you for the next one.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I grew up in a small town in Illinois. Lake Bluff is the name of the town, and it's to think that in that town in Illinois, somehow I ended up out in LA and being the general manager of the Los Angeles Lakers. That's something I would have never put together or even dreamed of as a kid. But just to see how God equips his people along the way, I think like he did Nehemiah. For me, that journey started with the basketball we talked about, playing the sport, loving the sport. And then I stayed at the University of Michigan and got a business degree and a law degree. And my first job was as an attorney, and it was I was doing business transactions, largely mergers and acquisitions of companies.
Not sports related?
Not sports at all. But it really taught me the art of the deal, how 2 sides could come together, make a deal. It taught me like the details of negotiating a contract and how contracts work. And I really missed sports when I was doing that. But again, God, it felt like he was equipping me with certain skills. And then that led into, after doing that for 2 or 3 years, I got a call to move out to California to work at a sports agency that was representing the top NBA players in the world. And it was to start as a contract lawyer in sports. So I was reading endorsement contracts, shoe deals, NBA contracts.
Wow.
Using what I had learned as a business lawyer. And that's where I started to meet players, and of course got to meet guys like Kobe Bryant and others, and developed then from a attorney into an agent, where I represented players, and along the way represented so many Lakers. Then in turn I get to know the Lakers owner and governor, Jeannie Buss, and had great interactions with her, and then ultimately got hired to be the GM of the Lakers. So it was step by step. It's something that I never could have put together on my own.
Yeah, so when you made the trek out here at first, you're not thinking general manager of the Lakers. Like, no way, right?
Not at all. In fact, Eric, I packed up I had a Jeep Cherokee, not a Wrangler, because cool guys have Wranglers and nerdy guys have Cherokees. But I packed up my Jeep Cherokee, drove across the country, and my only high school buddy that I knew was in my class was a guy named Vince Vaughn, who's
the
made
actor.
some super funny movies.
So you guys were friends in high school?
Probably not, PG rated, but really good movies. But yeah, a good friend in high school.
That's great.
He would go to my games. And so one of my, first early nights in LA, didn't know anybody, moved out here just for a job. He was like, yeah, you gotta come out with me. And it was like a scene out of the movie Swingers. He was just that guy introducing me to all his friends. And I quickly got sort of dialed into that subculture, but he's been a great friend the whole way. And still to this day, he's an incredible person.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this week in Nehemiah, we're looking at the perseverance. So chapter 4 opened up, and you would expect, because Nehemiah 3 is this amazing chapter where he, as a leader, he coordinated tons of teams of people to build this wall. The wall is halfway being built. Everyone thought it was impossible. It's going to be done in 52 days, which we'll see in coming weeks. But chapter 4, you turn the page in his leadership memoir, his journal, and it is a almost really sad opening, but it's what we know as leaders. He's being attacked from all directions. So right when it looks as if it's going to be, we win, we're getting attacked. And so chapter 4 in his leadership journal really is all about perseverance, the perseverance that Nehemiah displays. What along your journey, and I know it's hard to summarize all of that, but are there moments you can look back on where you really learned the value of perseverance, or God grew you in your perseverance through your leadership journey all the way from Illinois to here?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Eric. I think early when I got the job with the Lakers, I remember going to dinner in Newport Beach with Kobe, who at that point I'd known for over a decade. And he said, "Hey, you're about to latch onto this mega brand, this huge global sports brand in the Los Angeles Lakers. And on yours, you're successful. People will love and praise you. Don't listen to that, because then you'll get prideful and big-headed. But the other side of that is, on a year you don't do well, if you're going to be a failure and everyone's going to not like you and they're going to attack you. And don't listen to that, because that'll lead to self-doubt and second guessing." And I thought that was such good advice, because sports is an emotional journey. And I'm sure some of the things that Nehemiah went through were very emotional. I think the other thing that was told, you talked about attacks on him. I had a good friend once say, like, God is in control of your reputation. You just have to release it to him. You're in control of your character and the choices you make. And I felt like that was a really big thing.
That's a great word. Yeah.
Just knowing that people on these sports talk shows, they're going to say whatever they want. You're good, you're bad, you're ugly, you're not ugly. You can't really control that reputational part, but your internal decisions and your character, you can. And that's been really important for me.
That's huge. I mean, that applies so much to honestly to my life and my role, that the most important thing is that my character, my integrity is intact, that I'm walking with Christ and letting him mature me. I can control my walk with him, being blameless, being a man of my word, a man of integrity. And then I can't necessarily, there's a lot of things I can't control.
Yeah. I'm good friends with a Christian music artist, Stephen Curtis Chapman, and he had invited me down to Rick Warren's church. And it happened to be right when I got the Lakers job. And I was in the back with Stephen Curtis Chapman, and Rick Warren, who I don't know well, came up to me, and Stephen said, "Hey, you just got the job to be the general manager of Los Angeles Lakers. I'll never forget." Pastor Warren put his hand right here on my chest. He said, that's going to be under attack just because of how big that position.
Yeah.
And he's like, that character and that heart is the most important thing.
That's great.
And I've never really forgotten that. And I think for you, for me, for other leaders out there, the other piece of advice I think that's huge in terms of leadership is when you have a position, a large position, whether it's a church like Mariners that has an incredible brand or whether it's the Los Angeles Lakers, the larger that gets or the more, air quotes, powerful that gets, the more your character has to grow with it.
Yes.
Status quo character is not enough. And I think we look around at some of the sad church fall stories, and it's where something grows faster than someone's character.
I say that often, that if your competence outgrows your character, you're set up for a destruction, for a topple.
Yeah.
Or if you get more skilled than sanctified, you get better at your job. And the reality is, as leaders, our jobs make us better because of the opportunities that we're given as leaders. And the leaders who are listening, whether they're leading in a real estate company or a tech company, the opportunities that the role gives them will make them more skilled. So you have to grow your character, because if you don't, the role is going to make you better at your job. And if you're falling apart internally, you're set up for a fall.
That's well said. And I think I try to remind myself every day, and again, for other leaders out there, like, leadership is earned. It's not something that's given. And so I think, I almost hesitate to do a leadership podcast because I feel like leadership is something you need to learn over and over each day, right? I don't want to come on a show and feel like an
we're
expert.
done.
Yeah, like we're done, or
Right.
we know we have the playbook on leadership. Every time I think I've got it figured out, something new comes my way. But I just think it's important every day when you have a responsibility of leadership to go into it and say, I have to continue to earn this, not to become, sort of numb to being in a position of strength. And like, that's something that you were given or entitled to.
Yes, that's good. So because of your role, and you mentioned, college hoops at University of Michigan, and then lawyer, then agent, and now president, general manager at Lakers, you've been around a lot of incredible basketball players, and the game is often used as an illustration of perseverance, whether it's a player fighting through an injury or a team, fighting together to have better chemistry. What have you learned about perseverance what is the game taught you about perseverance? What has hoops taught you about perseverance?
Yeah. I guess when I think of perseverance, when the Lakers won a championship, an NBA title in 2020, we went through something that probably no other sports team, and maybe anywhere in the globe went through. We had to win in a medical bubble, which I think we're all tired of pandemic stories, and this is not a pandemic story. But in terms of like overcoming something that was so difficult, it took perseverance every day. We were, in a location that was like closed by fences. That was just basketball facilities and production equipment to put on, playoffs for the NBA playoffs, and apart from our families, apart from friends, apart from our routines, for over 3 months.
Gosh, yeah.
And so it was a daily mindset perseverance. And we as a team, as the Lakers, we knew it was a chance for us to give people going through hard stuff on the outside something to cheer for, something to pick up their day. And it was a perseverance mindset, but that was not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's, and I think in terms of like players coming back from injury, there was probably no better example of that than Kobe. I think he's got that Mamba mindset that all of us have heard of or studied. And I can remember late in his career when he tore his Achilles, which is a really hard injury for a basketball player to overcome. My wife and I and our 2 kids go to Mariners. And at the time, my wife, who graduated from Duke University, she was back at Duke with our son Durham. And I was home with Emory and taking care of her for the weekend. She was still young. I think she was, 2 or 3 years old. She was young. And I had gone to a game that night. We had a babysitter, and Kobe plays, and he tears his Achilles. And I got home at like midnight, 1:00 from the Lakers game, and it was a devastating injury for him. And I got a call from him, and he said, I really want to have surgery the very next morning, like 5, 6 in the morning. I don't want to spend an hour of time where my body doesn't work.
Wow.
I want to start that rehab process immediately. And I'm like, okay, I'm going
Wow.
to get it done. So as an agent, I had to call the doctor. I had to figure out care for my daughter, and it all worked out. But he wanted to start that perseverance journey of getting his ligament reattached and then the painstaking process of getting back to being a great player. And that was just his mindset of perseverance.
Yeah.
And it played into, seeing him get all the way back and then be able to retire in a game where he scored 60 points because he worked so hard.
Yeah. That hunger to have the injury and then that night already planning the surgery. I'm curious, your observation, is that coachable or is that just some have that?
Nature, nurture, right?
Yeah,
That's the ultimate question. I think it's both.
Okay.
But it was just his mindset for my leadership, and hopefully it was mutual that we rubbed off at each other because we were best friends for over 20 years. But I know in those moments he would never let himself feel sorry for himself.
Wow.
And I remember having a conversation with him about the Achilles, and it wasn't, oh my gosh, can you believe it? I'm going to miss a year. That Jason Tatum just went through this with the Celtics, so this happens to players. His mindset was, there's another mountain in my path. I'm going to have to climb it. I'm going to attack the climb. I'm going to enjoy the climb, but I know on the other side of the climb, I'm going to be stronger. And it's just part of my story.
Yeah, man, that's an inspiring story for sure to attack it.
Yeah.
So Nehemiah, chapter 4, the one that we just have spent time with on the weekend, is one that when I read it, I'm like, I don't like these days as a leader. It's the day when you find out that this is not going well, and then after lunch you find out something else is not going well. I mean, he's got internal problems, he's got external problems, but he challenged the people to fight. There's these 2 verses that we honed in on. It's really this beautiful paradox. In one verse, he tells the people, fight for your lives, fight for your families. And then in another verse, he says, God's fighting for us. So he really has this belief that we can fight, we can be strong, but ultimately God's the one who's got me. And that's what I think enabled Nehemiah's perseverance, was knowing that he could go all in because God had him covered, because God was defending him and walking with him. Is there a time in your leadership where you felt like, when you read Nehemiah 4, and when you look at a map, you see that all of the people like Geshem and Tobiah and Sanballat, these were governors of neighboring regions, and they are essentially surrounding him. I mean, he is surrounded by people who want to take him down, and yet he keeps going. In your leadership, has there ever been a season like that where it felt like completely surrounded, and how did you keep going?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I love his mind. I love Nehemiah's mindset of like, yeah, this depends on my hard work, but I also trust God at the same time. Because I think those are 2 important things as a leader to carry into the day. I try to start each day sort of emptied and in meditation and in the Word. Amen. And be mindful of like, God's blessed me with certain tools. My job now is to go out in the world and figure out how I can use those tools in a way to glorify him or help other people. And it's that's the mindset of, okay, God, you can do this. You can achieve these things through me, but I've got to go out and use the tools.
Yes.
And so I love that. In terms of a time of being totally under attack, I've had to go through tough stuff in the media. I worked my first couple of years, I worked with the Lakers legend, Magic Johnson, who's one of my favorite people in the universe. And my time working with him was magical. It was amazing. We had such a good time. But through a losing season, there were some media, sort of he said, she said narratives that were just out there that weren't true. But we know sometimes there can be a divide and conquer element to hard media. And so our relationship got affected by that. and it became public, which was a really hard thing. Now, again, just trusting in the Lord and leaning into grace and forgiveness. On the other side of that, he and I have an incredible relationship where we talk all the time.
That's
We're
beautiful.
brothers. We've prayed. And so I had to persevere through that because it was really hard to feel like you've lost a friend or you've lost someone's trust or respect. But he's a believer. He's a person of faith. And I think both of us looking back on it, we're like, hey, this can happen. It's like two little kids at the playground where, he said, she said,
Right.
and then there's a fight at the playground. But thankfully, because of the strength of our relationship and our faith, we were able to maintain our brotherhood.
I mean, I can tell that your faith impacts your leadership, which I love, the integration, that it's not as if, okay, I do my faith, check, I spent a little bit of time with Christ this morning, or I prayed on the way to work, and then now I lead, but that your faith impacts your leadership. I'd love to hear a bit about how that's matured for you. How does being a leader change for you because of your faith?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think like any leadership evolution, there's seasons to it, and I don't know if you feel this way with being such an incredible leader here at Mariners, but I feel like the game has given me so much career-wise. It's just blessed me so much. I spent 20 years as an agent, 8 seasons as a Lakers general manager. That's a long time to be in basketball, and it's given so much. So I feel like my mindset right now, and it's easy to say this, it's another thing to do it. So I don't want to, sound like I've got this perfected. This is just what I'm trying to do, is really at this stage of the career, how can I set others up to do great things with this game?
Yeah.
And whether that's the players, whether that's our coaches, whether it's people on our staff, kind of give back.
Yeah.
And it's really gratifying. And it's forming that next generation of leaders.
I love it. And I've told people about the Christian and a leader that if there's anyone who should understand being a servant, there's a lot written about servant leadership.
Yeah.
Like 1979 was the first big seminal book about servant leadership. Robert Greenleaf had released it. And then since then, it's been used in corporate C-suites all over. Be a servant leader, be a servant leader. There's like assessments you can take to see if you're a servant leader. But really, 2,000 years ago, Jesus got down and washed the feet of his disciples, came here to serve us. So those of us who are Christian, we have this embedded understanding of wanting to help others, wanting to put others in a position where they can thrive. Our identity, not just something we do, our identity is that we're servants because Jesus has served us. So it really impacts us.
It's interesting because I think servant leadership is a word that gets thrown around with the Christian world, and it's a powerful world, and it's the right word for leaders. The most important part about that to me is that should be something that others proclaim about a leader, and not a leader proclaims about
I'm
himself.
a servant leader, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's so much more powerful, and it resonates so much more if it comes that way. But when it comes down to sort of the Christian ideologies or the ways of Jesus in leadership, it just works. Like the way he treated people, the way he led works.
Yes.
It works in every circle.
It honors people.
It does.
It shows that people are not just tools for us to reach our goals, but we want to help them reach their goals. It places a high value on every individual. Yeah.
It works better than any other.
Totally. So your perseverance, it's on display from painful leadership seasons to also your track all the way from Illinois to your role now. Your faith's impacted your leadership. What about your faith impacting perseverance? How does being a Christian give you an edge when it comes to persevering?
That's easy. I think as a person of faith, it can relieve you from anxiety so that you can do the work, you can do your best job, you can leave everything on the court, you can leave everything in the meeting, you can give all you can give to other people, and then you can let go of the result. I think I think for people that don't have a faith and they believe the power is in their own hands, that's a recipe for anxiety.
Yeah. Man, that is so profound and insightful. It really is. Because being a follower of Jesus, I tell people all the time, and leaders that have asked me, it doesn't cause you to care less about your role. You actually can go more aggressive into your role,
Yeah.
the entrepreneurship that you're doing, the business you're launching, whatever it is. But your identity isn't in the results. Your identity is already secure.
Yeah.
So you can rest and know that you're already loved by him and you're already forgiven. You're already his, no matter what happens with this.
People, like fans, will come up at the games and be like, "Oh, you're so composed. How do you stay so calm?" And it's if I've done everything I can to put the players, to put the coaches in a position to win, of course I'm into the game, and of course,
I will say you do look composed though. I've seen, man,
but
you do look really composed.
It's letting go of that anxiety, and just being at peace in the work you've done. Do I get exhilarated with the win? Of course.
Yeah.
Am I crushed by a loss? Of course. But for sports reasons, not for personal reasons.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good distinction. All right, last question. I know that there's going to be a time coming in my leadership and yours, just because leadership's a constant ebb and flow, where we're going to need to be reminded of things we already know. So what do you tell yourself? How do you preach to yourself the next time you need to be reminded to persevere?
Well, I think it's just trying as best to stay rooted in humility. There'll be a day, this is hard to say, there'll be a day where the Lakers is not part of my title, or where maybe Mariners isn't part of your title. Right. And those are like hard things to think about, but it also grounds you in being humble. And the other thing it does is, because we know that the stewardship of these places, so whether it's Mariners or the Lakers, is not forever.
Yes.
It makes us want to persevere and pour into it while it's such a time as this, while it is something that God has in our life that we're stewards of, that we're caretakers of. And that just kind of forms a great perspective where you're not taking it for granted, where you're going to persevere through the hard things because you don't know how long you're going to have that opportunity.
Man, I love that. Rob, I'm really impressed, blown away by your wisdom, man. I mean, this is excellent. And your faith-filled leadership. I'm thankful that God has you where he has you, not only because I'm a Lakers fan, which I am, but because I love seeing godly people in roles in all different spheres of society, and to have someone who is filled with wisdom that comes from fearing God in the role that you're in. I'm really thankful for you.
Well, I appreciate it, Eric. It's interesting. Sometimes all the celebrities will go to games and watch the players, and I have this philosophy of like, we even the most famous people in the world need to be inspired by someone. So Leonardo DiCaprio or what, they'll come to the game to be inspired by the Lakers players. I'll say from a leadership perspective, I need to be inspired, and you're a huge example of that for me. Man. Just because I think what you've done for everyone associated with Mariners has been unbelievable. So thanks for being an inspiration to all of us.
Man, I'm so honored.